Well, good morning, Waspeteers. It's your old pal, King Waspinator here. Now, for years, I've made the claim that out of all the Fandom Menace YouTube channels, I consider Midnight's Edge to be the best. I don't always agree with the things they say, though I don't always disagree either. But I largely say that because of the sheer amount of time and effort they put into making sure they have all the facts laid out in a row as they make their case. Which is obviously something I've taken after, because video after video I do tons of research and always get all my specific details straight. But anyway, got a new video out from them this morning about Star Trek Lower Decks. The leaked viewership ratings do not bode well for international release. God. So anyway, it's like 5 minutes long. I'm going to listen to it, and you're going to watch me listen to it, and maybe stop it on occasion. Hell, this video might not ever see YouTube at all, because I might find myself with nothing to say to any of this, in which case, I'm literally talking to myself right now. Well, anyway, let's begin.
Presidency. It's America's assistant manager. And today, Joe Biden announced who he's picked to be.
Yeah, I don't want Daily Show ads, thank you.
To date, 2 episodes of Star Trek Lower Decks, the animated series from showrunner Mike McMahon, have been released. The series is only available to viewers in North America by way of CBS All Access in the United States and on Bell Media Networks in Canada. Like most other streaming services, CBS All Access does not reveal their numbers, but Canadian cable TV data are somewhat more apparent, and we have gotten a hold of what may be the actual viewership ratings for the first 2 episodes. In this video, we will go through those numbers, how the viewership is divided between different demographics, the relative drop from the first to the second episode, and about how successful, or rather, unsuccessful the series is.
Okay, right off the bat, they're going to be making a case that Star Trek Lower Decks is a flop because it's got low viewership numbers, which may or may not be true. But, I mean, just in the stuff that was just said right there, it's limited in North America, it's only available through CBS All Access and one Canadian network. I mean, is anyone expecting it to have huge numbers? The amount of people who subscribe to CBS All Access is a fairly small slice of demographic, the bulk of whom are probably on CBS All Access because it's the only way they're able to see any of the new Star Trek shows. And then the amount of the people who are on there for Star Trek who would be interested in watching a youthful Star Trek animated series in the first place is an even smaller number of that number. So, I mean, it kind of just goes without saying that its numbers are going to be low. And once again, this is a cartoon series. This is a different creature than other Star Trek shows. Something like this is the kind of thing that's going to take time to build an audience, because from my viewing of it, I don't think it's bad. But I do think that while it's a common thing, in the last several years for, people to say like, oh, if you don't like it, it's not meant for you. And, that's a kind of a non-argument and just basically just kind of a shitty, rude thing to say to try to dismiss someone's complaints. But in this case of this show, I actually think it's fair to say that this is a show that's not really made for my demographic. Still annoying as fuck, though. Don't get me wrong on there. But anyway, all I'm saying is it should be no surprise that 2 episodes in, it's not going to have a huge viewership. That's not like a shocking revelation. What this show needs is to dump some advertising towards non-Star Trek markets. Because I think the real value, if one is to say that this show has a value, is that it could be a good recruiting tool to get younger people who don't have the patience for the older Star Trek, to get them enough into Star Trek that they'll actually have the patience then to go back and watch the old stuff. So, anyway.
Please be advised that the numbers we are about to reveal have not yet been made public. They are collected by Bell Media, and they have been sent to us by an anonymous source who allegedly has access to these numbers. But as they, at this point, cannot be independently verified, not even by us, we stress that the data we are about to present must be considered rumor, albeit very detailed rumor. The first episode of Star Trek Lower Decks premiered with approximately 404,000 viewers, with a near-even split between the 18 to 49-year-old and the 50-plus demographic. Of that total audience, approximately 217,000 were male and 187,000 were female viewers. Compare Star Trek Picard's premiere on the same networks in Canada, which had 1.851 million viewers. This does not bode well for Lower Decks. However, we may be comparing apples to oranges, as Lower Decks can come across to the average viewer like a kid's show instead of the adult-oriented cartoon it actually is. Even so, this is the first show to follow Star Trek Picard, and it barely getting 22% of Picard's audience is noteworthy. Not just of how audiences in Canada responded to Star Trek
Picard and Secret Hideout's handling of the franchise, but
Once again, I wouldn't call it noteworthy. It seems to perfectly track with what one would expect of the demographic of Star Trek fans who'd be interested in watching an animated Star Trek show at all. I mean, it's not like the original Star Trek animated series from the 70s. I mean, there's people who like it, but it's not widely embraced by the entire Star Trek fan community. I know plenty of Trekkies over the years who've never seen it, or, maybe have only seen one, or clips of it or something. Or I've known people who didn't even know it existed. There might be someone watching this right now who had no idea that there is like a season and a half of an old Star Trek cartoon series from the 70s. Star Trek and animation are not synonymous with each other. And so, also just down to the fact that, like, I don't know what it was like in Canada, but I barely really saw any advertising for Lower Decks of any kind outside of the same kind of advertising I get for Star Trek in general, which is mostly like Google ads for Star Trek merch. I'm aware of what's coming from CBS mostly because of YouTube talking about it, and not because of them running ads on anything that I watch. So, I just, it really feels like Midnight's Edge is just, they need some sort of story about Star Trek, because their brand is kind of built upon agitating the fans, and there's not a whole lot else to talk about right now in terms of new things that are out there you can be making any kind of head row over. So this is a much ado about nothing in my eyes, but let's keep hearing it. Okay, so yeah, the Lower Decks didn't get as much viewership as Picard. I'd rather see how Lower Decks compares to Star Trek Discovery than Picard. Picard is a fluke because it had Patrick Stewart in it, so that was going to draw more curiosity viewers than that show might have had otherwise if it was just Star Trek Androids versus Borg, and they didn't have Jean-Luc Picard in it at all, but still had the same show story and all that kind of stuff, just with different characters. Picard would not have gotten the numbers it did if it hadn't been for Patrick Stewart's presence. And so, yeah, like Lower Decks is obviously not going to get that many viewers in comparison. This is a non-story.
But also of how they continue to react to the new products being released by Kurtzman and company. This past week, the second episode of Star Trek Lower Decks aired with a 46% drop in audience compared to the premiere. Only 200,019 viewers remain between episodes. And even though the series has two strong and perfect female leads, 56% of women that watched the show in the previous week fled in their own escape pods for something better. Keep in mind that while these numbers are only coming from Canada, a country with 10% of the population of the United States, it is safe to speculate that comparable percentages will be very similar to the USA. As while the cultures between Canada and the US do have their differences, when it comes to Star Trek...
If there is a significant drop in the female viewership, well, none of the male characters are sexy, and so there's no draw in that regard. Like, the girls aren't going to be getting a crush on either of the two main male characters of the central quartet of the cast. And the female characters, well, we haven't really got enough out of the Green Girl yet to really, I guess, like, get an idea of what her shtick really is going to be, aside from being the new girl. But Mariner is insanely annoying. Not just the attitude, it's like they took It's like everything that people complained about Michael Burnham, they took all those complaints and distilled it down into just that raw essence of it. You just know-it-all, does everything well, and won't shut the fuck up. To me, that's the real thing that drags Mariner down, and it's the thing that really, more than any other factor, kind of fucks the show up for me in terms of what I've watched of it so far. She won't shut up. It's just this constant, and it makes you tune out. You stop listening to it, and then it makes you lose track of what the hell's going on in the show. If they would dial back just the volume and speed of her dialogue a little bit, that might make it a little bit more palatable.
Star Trek, they're far more alike than not. These numbers, reportedly straight from Bell Media, are the only ratings number available anywhere on the planet, for the simple reason that CBS All Access won't reveal theirs, and there are no others. The series was famously released in North America without any further international distribution deals in place.
Oh, famously, yeah.
Premiere, showrunner Mike McMahon claimed that this was
due to the release having been pushed up by a month due to the beer bug.
However, this explanation does not hold up to...
I would just say COVID, you fucking cowards.
This year.
Producer Heather Caden claimed that both Season 3 of Discovery and Lower Decks would be ready by May. While in March, showrunner Mike McMahon maintained that Lower Decks, at least, was still on schedule.
I know quite a few channels do this thing, or just like they refuse to say COVID. They'll call shit the beer bug. They don't want to affect their advertising. Like, look, dudes, not only do you get the Patreon and the Super Chats and all these other things, you advertise for Surfshark for at least half of every fucking video that y'all put out, and a lot of your videos start off with ads anyway. Like this one started off trying to make me watch The Daily Show and shit. This whole avoidance of the COVID, the Voldemort word, can't say it, calling it the beer bug and shit like that. It's just chicken shit. It's a minor criticism, but I'm getting really tired of all these YouTube entertainment channels just being chicken shit in that way. Just, if you're gonna bring it up, then have the balls to fucking say it. COVID.
From home. Even if there were delays since then, enough would have been ready to preview it to international audiences months ahead of its eventual August release. That the series still premiered in North America without any international distribution deals in place can only mean that none were convinced to buy what they were selling. If McMahon's claims that talks with possible international distributors are reportedly in progress and are to be believed, then these potential international takers are waiting for viewership numbers from North America to determine which course of action to take. Clearly, these numbers do not bode well, as the chances of landing an international distribution deal diminishes in tune with the decline in the show's ratings from week to week. Potential international distributors will...
You know, it's an interesting point that international distributors and Netflix and Amazon are a bit wincy about wanting to pick up anything from the Alex Kurtzman wing of CBS anymore. I don't think that has necessarily reflects at all upon the quality of Lower Decks, or lack thereof of Lower Decks. That's entirely a result of their mishandling of Discovery and Picard. I mean, yeah, it's an interesting indictment of Secret Hideout and CBS All Access, but I'm not sure if it necessarily reflects on this show specifically. This show is just the first to reap the rewards of the seeds that CBS has already sown.
We'll also have noted the lack of interest for the pilot episode when it was published on YouTube, geo-blocked to the US. At least it became geo-blocked once they remembered to turn that feature on, a few hours after uploading. Be that as it may, with viewership numbers like these, Secret Hideout and CBS will have to drop their price significantly if they are to have any chance of selling the series to anywhere else. If they don't, it is not outside the realm of possibility that by the time this is all said and done, the only ones who will see Lower Decks are the few bitter enders in North America. Let us know your thoughts on these numbers and how excited you are for the remaining episodes of Lower Decks that still lie ahead of us in the comments.
Well, I just let you know my thoughts. It's all based off an incredibly small sample size. Canada's trends and viewership do not necessarily match up with America's trends and viewership. The fact that CBS All Access doesn't put out their numbers is probably wise on their behalf. I can only imagine they're probably pretty rinky-dinky. But I don't necessarily see that has to reflect on the show itself. Lower Decks obviously does have its problems. But I've also noticed that younger people, if they are actually given a chance to watch it, seem to like it. So, I just really think the problem here is that they need to put a little money into advertising and start promoting it to people who watch a lot of, younger Adult Swim kind of content. Put this in front of the Rick and Morty people. Put this in front of the China, Illinois people. Maybe after they get a season out, instead of aiming for the international distribution, maybe try to sell it to Adult Swim so that it can actually be aired on television in the States to people who are already inclined to watching this kind of content. But the numbers are also not a surprise at all. Not at all. So, factually accurate, but why? Is this really the only story you have to make out of Lower Decks? It's not good enough, pun intended, for that you could just be talking about this, how frantically annoying it is? Oh well. Guess we'll see you next time, folks. Stay waspinated.